In this Elden Ring Nightreign video, we're going to be talking about Recluse. We'll be taking a look at her stats, her skills, what weapons are good for her, how to master playing her, and we'll also include how to complete her Remembrance quest, and find a pathway through Limveld to reach the Night Lord at your best. Recluse's gameplay focuses on casting powerful spells to deal high damage from a safe distance, so the challenge of her is mapping out exactly where to go to make sure you get the gear that you need, as the spells are bound to weapons and random as you explore. To make your life easier, I won't repeat tips from our beginner guide, but if you're just starting out and want a better understanding of the game, make sure you check that out to save yourself hours of frustration. Okay, so let's take a look at Recluse's stats first. She has D in HP, A in FP, and C in Stamina. She is tied for the lowest HP in the game with Revenant, so you definitely don't want to get hit by enemies because she can die very, very easily. She does have an extremely large FP pool, though, starting at 80 FP, and she does have okay stamina, even though it's not great. So she's definitely set up for spell casting or using lots of weapon skills should you find one that's excellent. But the main thing is, because her HP is so low, getting into melee range with a weapon skill is dicey, to say the least. So likely, if you're using Recluse, you're going to be leaning into spell casting. And taking a look at her scaling stats, she has D in Strength, C in Dexterity, S in Intelligence, S in Faith, and C in Arcane. So she's got S in 2 stats, predominantly spellcasting stats, meaning she can use any sorcery or any incantation effectively in this game. So whether you pick up a seal or a staff, she's going to be able to use it and deal high damage when using it. Additionally, any magic-infused weapons or holy-infused weapons will perform adequately well with her because of the scaling that she has. Again, though, the danger is her low HP pool, so it's not recommended that you prioritize trying to get melee weapons instead. You should be focusing on finding staves and seals with better spells. So moving along to her skills, the Recluse skills are some of the most fun and intricate of any class in the game, and it makes this class probably have the highest skill ceiling out of all the Nightfarers. So we'll take a look at her passive ability first. This is called Elemental Defense, and it enables Recluse to regain FP by taking an element from a target. The element can be taken from an ally too, and usually follows the last damage taken. These elemental pulls not only give you back FP, allowing you to manage your FP constantly so you can keep casting spells, but they're also saved to a magic reservoir that you can trigger using your character skill Magic Cocktail. And the first step, the very first step to playing Recluse effectively, is learning to manage your FP so that you can keep casting spells. If you blow through all your FP, then get to a boss and you can't cast any spells, you're not going to be very effective for your team. So learning what spells are good and how FP efficient they are can take time, and when to use your FP regain using Elemental Defense between like how many spell casts and things like that, and how to prioritize like when should I cast a spell, when should I just save my FP and let my allies finish things off. These are all things that take time to learn, but that is the first thing you must do as Recluse, and it's one of the reasons that she has a higher skill ceiling. So moving on to Magic Cocktail, in order to use this, you need to press the active skill button, which is E on PC or triangle and L2 on PlayStation, and this will absorb the element, as we just mentioned, giving you FP back and banking it in your magic reservoir. And you can see the element that you've saved as it'll be displayed in your UI with its symbol on the bottom left part of the screen or down at the bottom of the screen. And once you've collected 3 of these elements, the 4th activation of this character skill will instead use a mix of these properties to unleash a special effect based on the combination of elements that you have there. This 4th use of Magical Cocktail is one of the most complex mechanics in terms of characters for gameplay, as you need to balance your FP and your desire to trigger the specific combinations in specific situations, and the fact that you're locked into an inescapable animation before you can regain FP again makes it so that you may want to use some of these when it wouldn't seem like you would, or maybe you need to get better spacing before you can activate it, because if you just go to regain FP and you forgot that you're going to be locked into this animation, you can get hit. So next we're going to talk about all the combinations that you can do with Magic Cocktail. This is going to be kind of a lengthy explanation because there are a lot of combinations possible because you have 4 elements. So if you'd rather not have an explanation on these, you can skip this section and move ahead. But if you want to know what all these things do and what you should prioritize, then this could really, really help you. So first is Pure Magic. This is if you've pulled the magic element 3 times, it will enwreath the enemy in magic that deals damage for some time, and it will continue to encircle and attack the target. This is probably the most basic combination you'll trigger often because most of the staves have magic damage on their spells, and despite this not doing a lot of damage, it's quite useful as the magic burst flinches enemies and can sometimes stop their attack animations. Next is Pure Fire. This occurs when you have 4 fire elements banked. This will allow you to throw a whirlwind of flame, and the flame spreads across a small area upon contact and burns for some time. The Pure Fire combination is very useful against bosses and groups of enemies, as it not only does a small explosion when it reaches the target, but it also sets the ground on fire, dealing some damage over time and flinching enemies. Next is Pure Lightning. This occurs when you've banked 3 lightning elements. This unwreaths you in lightning and bolsters your dodging action. This effect gives you a dodging buff that makes your dodges extend longer, work faster, and makes your character invisible for several frames. This effect lasts quite a while and is very useful when bosses enter their final stage and you need to dodge massive AoEs and relentless combos. And then you have Pure Holy, which is when you have 3 Holy banked. This one is quite straightforward. It makes you a bit more tanky and helps you maintain your poise better, but in general it's not very useful compared to some of the other effects you can trigger. Past this is where the combinations get very interesting. First, you have Magic and Fire. When you have a combination of Magic and Fire elements banked, you'll launch a Wreath of Flame that pursues enemies. This combo deals decent damage and can be useful for groups of enemies as it generates a small AoE explosion. Next is Magic and Lightning, and this executes a broad forward slash with a magical blade. This creates a frontal projectile AoE that should theoretically do good damage, but for some reason whenever I use it in combat, it ends up underwhelming. It also moves you forward a little bit, which can place you out of your Terra Magica or into danger, so be careful when using this one. Next is Magic and Holy. This covers a nearby area with a magical veil, fully conserving FP for self and allies for a short time. This is actually very useful for you and your allies when fighting bosses, as it will generate a decently sized dome within all FP costs are negated for both spells and skills. Whenever you see this dome go up, cast your most taxing spells and skills, and if you're playing in a group with a Recluse and you see this, and you want to use something that has high FP, go in there and do so. Next is Fire and Lightning. Become a fireball and barrel forward, raining lightning on nearby foes. This combination is flashy and fun, darting you forward to your target as a gap closer and then unleashing a lightning AoE 360 degrees around you. The downside is that it also puts you right into boss melee range or out of your Sorcerer's Sigil, so be careful when using it. Feels great against small mob groups though. Next is Fire and Holy. Raise a torch for a limited time that raises max HP and reduces status ailment gauge buildup for nearby allies and lowers max HP of nearby enemies. At level 1, this is a 60 HP buff out of a base of 200 and 221 out of 740 at level 15. This cocktail is incredibly useful against Night Lords that cause damage over time and ailments, so keep it handy if you can manage your FP during those fights. And next for the double combos is Lightning and Holy. Weave a layer of lightning that parries enemy attacks for a short time. Cocktails like this one are why the Recluse is one of the highest skill ceiling classes in the game. You can prep this cocktail during a boss fight and simply let the boss hit you and get an easy parry opportunity. You must have a melee weapon to take full advantage of it, but you can use comms to get your teammates to get in better for ripostes. It can also be used to cancel some extended boss attack animations. And lastly, we come to triple combination. These are the hardest to do during gameplay, but they yield the highest rewards. First is Magic Fire Lightning. In this case, you'll conjure a frontwards exploding gravity orb. The gravity orb pulls enemies inward, expands, and explodes, inflicting heavy damage. This trio of elements is excellent for large mob groups and bosses that have lots of adds like the Tibia Mariner. The explosion is quite large and does good damage that can one-shot most of the lower tier enemies in these arenas. Magic Fire Holy. Spew a mixed affinity breath that inflicts damage upon enemies and restores HP and FP to allies on contact. This creates a frontal AoE of fire that you can manage by moving and aiming your character. The fire damage is decent, but more importantly, it flinches enemies and can help your allies, making it very valuable when you can aid FP and HP recovery while they're in melee range of a boss. Fire Lightning Holy. Create a lightning rod and thrust it forward into the terrain. While lightning strikes the rod after a short delay, this combination does quite good damage to your target and has an AoE effect that can decimate groups as well. And lastly, Magic Lightning Holy. Create Cold Storm with area effect and retreat inside Ice Block, gaining invulnerability. This is a good combination that creates a very large AoE and gives you a good escape from damage, but it's very difficult to time and has a very long cast time without dealing much damage, so if you accidentally use this when you don't need to, you can be out of the fight for some time. Next, we'll take a look at her ultimate art, which is called Soul Blood Song. This is your ultimate technique that builds up by doing damage, and attacking will also build up over time gradually. This skill can be particularly powerful as it can help both you and your allies regenerate FP and HP from simply attacking enemies. This skill is best used mid or late fight when your team is struggling with flask and FP management to give one final boost, and pairs very well with auto-cast skills as it works as free regeneration while you dodge, for example. The Recluse Remembrance Relics influence this skill by giving you 30% increased HP on activation and even increased attack power, so make sure you do the quest as soon as possible. Also note that after you cast this on a boss or a group of enemies, it's a great time to just cast spells continuously, as usually you can replenish most of the FP cost from the damage that you deal on a spell cast, allowing you to just keep casting while this is up, so you don't have to mix in the magic cocktail and you can just deal out a lot of damage. Before we begin with relics, you should know that all characters have more than one container to perform rites in. Doing your Remembrance quests unlocks the Recluse Chalice, which gives you new color combinations for this character. There are additional chalices to be gained from completing quests and completing the final boss, or from purchasing at the small jar bazaar as well. Make sure you purchase them all and any special runes that show up there to optimize your choices. A full list of these can be found on the wiki. I personally use the Recluse's Chalice the most, which provides yellow, green, and any color. This is available by progressing her character quest, as are some of the best relics in the game. As a Recluse, your relics play a very important role for your character. Since you're a spell-focused player, FP management is very important, but unlike the Revenant, you will have a built-in way to regain, so your main focus is to make spells cost less and to increase the size of your FP bar. This means you can look for relics that increase FP or add levels to Mind. For the basic starter chalice, you should focus on getting buffs to your HP, Mind, and Intelligence. You should also try to pick up buffs to spells you like, such as Gravity, and since you start with Glintstone Sorceries by default, it's a good option to buff that one as well. You can also slot things that boost incantations if you plan on going that way. This will of course be up to chance, as you can't be guaranteed you'll get the matching spell type to drop once you're out on expedition. For the Recluse Chalice, you should make full use of the Recluse specific relics that you get. My endgame combination is a Grand Tranquil Scene rune that gives buff to spells, mind, and intelligence, the Bone-like Stone that buffs your ultimate by adding the 30% extra HP and some attack power plus intelligence, and the Vestige of Night because it auto-casts Terra Magica underneath you whenever you do your first elemental pull. With these relics, you get a lot out of your ultimate and you have improved performance during the whole run. Of course, you can customize your playstyle, so I suggest you have a look at the relics page on the wiki to find effects that match your needs. When it comes to the Recluse quest, I won't get into all the details of how to complete this quest to avoid spoilers, but I'll give you a couple of important tips on the 2 points I saw everyone get stuck on without giving any significant details. If you don't want any spoilers, just click on the next chapter of this video, but if you want to know the full quest, you can look on the wiki. Once you begin your Remembrance, you'll work in an instanced version of the Round Table Hold, and sometimes you'll have to set out on expeditions to advance unique objectives. You cannot match with someone else who has this Remembrance, but if you have people in a friend party, only the leader's Remembrance will be active and count, so even if you have the same objective, you may miss out if you aren't the party lead. The Recluse's quest has 2 uniquely difficult points. One is at page 6, where you're tasked to finding a lurker in the Round Table Hold, but there's nobody. The trick is to go to the sparring grounds and attack the NPC there. In some cases, you need to change your sparring level for it to count. The next step you'll get stuck on is page 7 because the game does not tell you what to do next, and even if you guess right, the party problem can really mess this up. You have to defeat the final Night Lord and not complete the post-game sequence normally, but instead explore the area and find a unique scenario for this character. Doing the last step rewards you with an outfit. Moving on to weapons and equipment. As one of the lowest HP classes, your objective as Recluse during expeditions is to find specific weapons that will provide you the right spells. You should search for fort locations, and there are always 2 of them on every expedition map. Here you'll find an area at the very top with a map that will mark scarabs and secret treasure chests, as well as a rack of staves to loot. You can also do the rise locations, but finding the seals can be rather annoying as there are many places they can be hidden. We have some notes about them on the wiki and are compiling a list of images of where to check, so you can use that information if you want to target rises. If you want to find incantations, look for great church locations. There are always 2 on every expedition map. Here you'll find either a boss above ground or an underground passage leading to a subterranean boss. The underground churches are always better as there's a chest with a guaranteed sacred seal, or 2. Like all classes, you should be aware that you can find the corpses of fellow players around the map and get their loot, so use the group password Fextra to increase your chances of finding well-geared remains to help you along. Ideally, your run will begin by clearing the first camp you immediately land at and getting to level 2 at a nearby Site of Grace, and then going straight to these locations to get yourself some powerful spells. Death Rancor and Ancient Death Rancor are my favorites to get, but you can also make do with many others, and even your starter staff if you upgrade it if you visit a mine. If you plan on getting a drop from the world, you'll want one of the purple staves, preferably the Prince of Death's Staff, Meteorite Staff, or Lusat's Glintstone Staff. Ironically, I seem to get the Azure Glintstone Staff pretty often, but I should warn you that while Common Azure is very powerful, a lot of bosses are extremely mobile and move right out of the way, leave you standing there doing nothing a lot of the time when you use this spell. If you want to use incantations, Lightning Spear and Black Flame are my favorites to get, but I've also been successful with Flame Sling. Traditionally, powerful dragon incantations like all the dragon breaths don't work as well as you'd expect because of the AoE mobility of bosses. However, the massive effects can be incredible, particularly Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike, Burnow of Flame, and Scarlet Aeonia. Check your Night Lord's weaknesses and pick the best element for your run. You can also opt for melee weapons, but you need things that scale with intelligence, so these will be magic infused or holy infused with faith scaling. And some of the default weapons have very poor intelligence scaling, so you'll have to look for those. And bows and shields are not really what you want on this character unless they have a passive benefit that's good for you. For buffs that you want to look for on your character, you want anything that increases HP or gives you HP back in some way, anything that increases FP or grants FP in some way, reduced FP cost on spells, increased casting speed, increased potency or duration effects of sorceries, incantations, and charged sorceries, improved affinity attack power, negates damage or improves damage negation including under conditions such as being hit, and anything that makes you less likely to be targeted. Note that it can be kind of difficult to gear Recluse sometimes because if you have a mix of sorceries and incantations, if you pick up gear that boosts incantation damage, then your sorceries won't benefit it. And if you pick up gear that boosts sorcery damage and you have a lot of incantations, they won't benefit from it. So typically it's best to have a lot of one type or the other and only have one that can give you some elements. Like for instance, if you have one seal that can give you fire for you, but the rest of your spells are magic, that might be a good scenario. Also, don't forget to seek out talismans. You can have 2 of these slotted at a time. There are scarabs around the map that you can memorize where they're located and run to them. Or you can get the guaranteed talisman from the locked area inside the castle in the middle of the keep. But this requires you beating a sometimes tough boss, so we usually do that on day 2. But you can get a purple talisman out of it, which is really nice. Talismans to look for are anything that raises FP and MP, and of course Erdtree's Favor, Graven School Talisman to improve sorcery damage, Faithful Canvas Talisman to improve incantations, Primal Glintstone Blade to reduce FP cost, Radagon Icon to improve spell casting speed, Godfrey Icon to improve charged spell damage, Scorpion Charm for your matching element to improve the damage of that, Assassin's Cerulean Dagger to regenerate FP on critical hits, Ancestral Spirit Horn to regenerate FP when defeating enemies, and the Turtle Talisman or Viridian Amber Medallion for stamina management, because a lot of times you run out of stamina when casting spells. Moving to party composition, the Recluse is successful with any party, but since it's such a squishy class, it's best paired with classes that can take the heat from battle away. If you get the right spells, weapon effects, and talismans, you can deal fantastic damage and really take down bosses, while also providing off heals and buffs to your team via your unique cocktails. My favorite party compositions for Recluse are Guardian Recluse and Wilder, or Duchess, Iron Eye, and Recluse. Making the Recluse perform best is entirely about finding the right equipment and rhythm. You should always have your cocktails in mind when taking in elements, and position yourself to survive so you can keep cranking out crazy damage from afar. I highly recommend that you customize your relics to match the boss you're about to take on if you're struggling with specific bosses. So that wraps up our Recluse video. I hope you guys got something out of this one. As always, if you have other Recluse tips, you can leave them in the comments. And if you have questions about Recluse, you can leave them there as well, and I will try and answer them as soon as I can.